took all the best of me. Is it enough finally? Give it all up, set me free. You know the one day I will.
Oh hey, it's Wes, and it's time to talk about something a little bit different. It is the Kickass Panel from Lupo. Alright, so I have some kids around here, and there are certain things that I'm not supposed to say. So that's just going to be the way of things here. So what is this? The Kickass Panel is a somewhat compact RGB light that gives you the power to dial things in however you want, light things up however you want. Now we have obviously seen RGB panels already in the past. This one is ubiquitous. One might say a bit of a trendsetter. And I'm going to have to compare these just a little bit to this. This is the Bowling P1. Probably one of the best-selling RGB panels ever made. So this lets you do all the colors with an easy and simple user interface and an easy-to-use screen on the back. So that's the Bowling P1. This is the Kickass Panel from Lupo. So what is it going to give us? Well, for starters, this thing is made in Italy. This, you can guess where this is made. This thing gives us a higher output. So this is almost 10 times as much power as that little panel. So in a manner of speaking, this occupies a bit of an in-between niche in the market. It's not quite as big and powerful as those production lights, but it's also not as small and unpowerful as our regular run-of-the-mill LED panels. So if you need something in between, this is what the panel is made for. But enough of that, let's get into the categories and talk about this in more detail, starting with, as always, the build quality. So the build of this light, it is a thick, hard plastic. The switches and the buttons on the back here, a little bit generic. They feel pretty durable though. On the side here, we have a standard barrel power connector, as well as a USB-C power connector. We have 1/4-20 sockets on the bottom and sides, and a reasonably bright, easy to read screen on the back. We've got some knobs on the side here, very nice. And USB port in the middle here that I think is for firmware updating. I've heard that the firmware can be updated on this, more on that in a minute. Now on the back here we have what is kind of a bit of an archaic screen. There was a time when this would be a fantastic screen, but getting through the menu is honestly a little bit laborious. It's not the most intuitive process, so if I want to change the way that this light works, I go into manual, and then I choose whether I'm in HSS mode or CCT mode, or RGB mode. There we go. So it's not the most intuitive interface. Whereas on this cheap little panel that costs less, I can get this going right here. And I have a dial for my saturation, just like this one has. And if I want to change the mode that I'm in, I press this button and it just cycles through the modes, easy peasy. There's no real menu to get into, just everything is very quick and simple. So this one's a little bit old-fashioned. Honestly, it strikes me as being a little bit handmade. If you look deep inside this, you have much larger internal components than you would see on these little micro-manufactured made in China stuff. So this is larger, beefier stuff than we're used to seeing a lot these days from all the mass-manufactured things. This appears to be a very rugged chassis made out of very solid materials. And I feel pretty confident in banging this thing around and treating it poorly, because it's clearly made to be used that way. Overall, I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. Now why did I end up on 8 out of 10? Well, just because of how generic some of these products appear to be and the low resolution of the screen. Although I can expect it to take some hits, and I do believe that it's very well made, just kind of missing a couple things for me. Feature set. This has a lot of features, but not all of them. As I mentioned before, you can power this over USB-C. You can use this in HSI mode, CCT mode, RGB WW mode. Those are all great, and it can also simulate various gel effects if you go into the menu. There are classic cinema gels that you can cycle through that you would normally put on a traditional light. A bit of a startup time here. All right, so go into manual mode. preset modes. These are our basic presets here. But then if we keep going, we got Diva Green, Caribbean, Pastel Blue, Cerulean, Lavender, Magenta. These might seem like arbitrary names for colors and such, but these are standard color gel palettes that you would use in cinema lighting. And that's why we're seeing those in here. Dark Bastard, Amber, Rose Tint, Medium Yellow Light, Straw, Salmon. Anyway, there's a lot of colors in here that you can choose from. But again, cycling through this list is a bit arduous. It would be nice if I could use one of these knobs to quickly scroll through it, but I cannot. I'm in Salmon now. This is Salmon. It also gets very dim. Okay, moving on with my Salmon light here. We have 2100 lux at 1 meter, which is almost 10 times as much as this guy right here. It's a more focused spread of light, so we have the LEDs underneath this panel, but then there is a thick focusing diffuser panel. So it will give us a somewhat diffused light in a more focused beam. So this is designed to get you more power where you need it. This is 20 watts total power, a CRI of 96, TLCI of 98. That's pretty good. And we can do CCT mode from 2800 all the way up to 10,000K, but obviously your CRI is going to be best closer to the middle where we're just using our blue and yellow white LEDs. And on the back, we have a standard L plate for the MP batteries. So here are the disadvantages for this. Number one, it can't charge the battery while it's on it. That is normal. It is rather large, not pocketable. Not so normal, depending on which light you're looking at. There is no Bluetooth, no way to easily control this with an app. Now this can be an up or down depending on the device. Some have pretty easy to use apps though, and I would like to see that. The biggest feature that is missing for me on this is a battery gauge. There is no way of checking the battery level on this device, even in the menu. Now Lupo have said that they're planning on adding it to the menu at a later date through a firmware update. But being in the menu, much like with our Pavo tubes here, battery gauge is not very useful. You want to be able to look at your light and say, I've got this much battery left. Do I need to swap out the battery real quick before I start my next shot? And this does not have that. It's a big problem for me. So this has a lot of features when it comes to light, but not a lot when it comes to technology. I'm going to give that a 7 out of 10 for feature set. Light quality, as mentioned before, 96 CRI, 98 TLCI. It's quite good for a panel of this size. Most compact panels kind of cheap out on the LEDs a little bit. I find that the richness of the saturation is not the best, but it's close. Being this shape of light is going to be very difficult to diffuse it or change the shape of the light, unlike, say, a Bowens mount or a round light of some kind that's designed to go into a softbox. So this kind of just is what it is for the size, and that can be a disadvantage or an advantage. So I'm going to give that an 8 out of 10 for light quality. It's not perfect. Usability. So the interchangeable battery is obviously a big win for people doing a lot of high volume videography, whereas something like this, you're gonna have to plug it in or something to keep it going. The battery's in there, it is what it is. So that's great, you can go through a whole bunch of batteries and keep this thing going. But that also makes it larger. This is huge compared to other compact panels. It's reasonable size compared to large panels. Again, this exists in kind of a middle ground. Problem for me though is the menu system. Again, not that intuitive, and we're lacking a battery gauge. So the usability for something that seems like it should be very simple, it goes all the way down to 7 out of 10 for me. It's just not perfect for that either. Value. So once again, this is a panel that places itself squarely in the middle and makes it difficult to compare to other things. So this 2100 lux 20 watt panel comes in at $300, which seems a lot compared to something like this is about $100. But again, this is not some factory manufactured thing from China. This is made in Italy. This is a quality made product, which you can value that or you can not value that. That's an issue in objectifying the value of a product because that's a bit of an intangible in some ways. So this Bowling P1 is $160, doesn't give you as much light. But then there's something slightly larger, like the GVM 800D RGB, which is 40 watts, more light, just a little bit bigger than this. But it has Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, 10x10 panel, which gives you softer light. That thing is only $100. That is a phenomenal value. And then you can go even bigger with the 12x12, with the 43 by 46 centimeter Godox LED 1000 for $320. Tremendous amount of power, 1000 watts of power. And again, it's not that much bigger. So the problem is, as soon as you go from being pocketable to not pocketable, the sky is kind of the limit at that point. So when you're this big, you might as well be just a little bit bigger for a lot of people's applications. But then there's this. This is the Lupo 700. And this was not supposed to be the main focus of this video. But you might notice something. This little guy is actually brighter than the Kickass panel. And it costs less. It's $160. And it's smaller. So if you don't need full RGB, this little panel is kind of coming up out of nowhere. And honestly, for me, is a much better buy. It's a great value for a tremendous amount of power. This thing is 4200 lux at 1 meter, so this is brighter. On the back here, there is no user interface. All we have are these two wheels here for our white balance and our intensity. Dead simple, easy to use. At that point, obviously you don't need an app anymore. It would serve no purpose. And again, you have external power. You've got USB-C power. Quick and easy. Don't have to wait for the operating system to start up either. So where does that leave us on this uniquely positioned panel? Well, not great. So obviously, this is probably worth every penny because it is a well-made product, but it just doesn't compete that great living in this weird middle ground. So I'm gonna give this a 5 out of 10 for value. So that gives us a total of 35 out of 50. And I guess it's kind of expected to have some difficulty with the scoring of this when it's such a niche product. It has inserted itself into the middle of the market. So if you need a light of this specificity, then you probably already know who you are. For me, when I am in a well-lit condition and I try to use this as a backlight or a hair light, like if there's some daylight coming in, it's not quite bright enough. And those bigger panels would be great for that. But then, when I'm in a smaller condition, in an indoor, somewhat controlled lighting scenario, this is just bigger than I need it to be. So anyway, let me know down in the comments below what you think about this light and what you think the best application for this light is. And I'll get back to you. If you want to pick up one of these, or one of these, I'll have some links in the description. Buying through those can help support this channel and feed my fat cats. Actually, I'm not even sure that there'll be affiliate links. It's just gonna be links, because I can't find this on Amazon. So until next time, let's go take some photos.